to start to talk about expectations for this infrastructure package. President Biden will be laying out the what of the package next week, but how many jobs will it create and at what net cost to the American people?
Well, I think there's certainly no net cost. There will be a net gain. When you think about infrastructure, it's a classic example of the kind of investment that has a return on that investment. That's one of many reasons why we think this is so important. This is a jobs vision as much as it is an infrastructure vision, a climate vision, and more. Obviously, the numbers are still being reviewed. The president's deciding what will go into what's going to be rolled out next week. But what I'll say is that expectations have been high. They've been high before. We're probably the third administration in a row to arrive with the American people expecting big things on infrastructure. I think this time we can actually get it done.
So you said yesterday it will be at least partially paid for. Senate Democrats are expecting around $3.5 trillion. What part of that will be paid for?
Well, that's obviously part of what we need to work with Congress to establish. I'm hearing a lot of appetite to make sure that there are sustainable funding streams. And again, at the same time, we know there's a great return on investment on infrastructure, so some level of deficit financing could make sense. We got to make sure that what we come up with is responsible, that it is reliable, and that it's going to work for America, not just for this moment, but for a generation.
We are expecting business taxes and high-income individual taxes to go up. New raisers under discussion that are squarely in your wheelhouse. And I want to go sort of rapid fire through them because you've commented on some of them before. First, a gas tax. You've called it old-fashioned to raise the gas tax. Do you still believe that? Could that go up?
Well, the gas tax has traditionally been part of how we fund the Highway Trust Fund, but we know that it can't be the answer forever because we're going to be using less and less gas. We're trying to electrify the vehicle fleet. So if there's a way to do it that doesn't increase the burden on the middle class, we can look at it. But if we do, we got to recognize that's still not going to be the long-term answer.
What about a mileage-based tax?
So I think that shows a lot of promise. If we believe in that so-called user pays principle, the idea that part of how we pay for roads is you pay based on how much you drive, the gas tax used to be the obvious way to do it. It's not anymore. So a so-called vehicle miles traveled tax or mileage tax, whatever you want to call it, could be a way to do it.
Build America bonds?
Definitely a lot of promise in terms of the way that we leverage that kind of financing. And, you know, there have been ideas around things like a national infrastructure bank, too. I don't mean to try to disrupt the spirit of the rapid fire, but you're hearing a lot of maybe here because all of these things need to be balanced and could be part of the mix.
And then a tax on carbon emissions. The Tax Foundation has suggested that at the rate that the Biden administration has set for the per ton cost of carbon, that it could raise about $2 trillion. Will you move in that direction?
So carbon pricing is one of the ways that a lot of economists and the business community believe we can have a market-driven approach that also deals with greenhouse gases. But it's too soon to assign a use for those dollars, even if it does happen, because you could do it in many different ways. There's even a version of it that would be revenue neutral. The point of carbon pricing is that there's less carbon. I wouldn't think of it just as a revenue mechanism.
Would you see that happening in the next year?
Again, that requires Congress, that requires the president and Congress to be in alignment. And these are exactly the conversations we're having right now with Democrats and Republicans on the Hill and within the administration.
You've said that you talk to Republicans almost every day.
Yeah.
Just this week, they've called this package a boondoggle and a ploy, the way that it's been reported the administration is structuring it. Meanwhile, progressives have suggested it's not big enough. It needs to be $10 trillion. So how do you thread that needle?
Well, given that the package hasn't even been rolled out yet, it feels a bit like politics. At the end of the day, there's going to have to be a single answer that everybody will want to tug in one direction or another. But what we know is we've got to think big. We've got to have an investment that's going to support the next generation. It's got to be transformative. And I think that Republicans and Democrats alike see the need for that.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.